Yo, Fling here with DFS Army, and this is your Week 16 Millie Maker review. We're going to look at the leaderboards of the Millie Maker top 10 lineups, what won it, and then we're also going to look at the 2-game slate on Saturday. We've got a lot of these this time of year. Want to see what pros are doing, what's winning, how do we attack these slates? So let's do it. All right, so I got the winning lineup here. And it's interesting because I actually tweeted about this before the slate when I looked at Michael Penix's projection, he was projected for almost 4x the salary. So I was curious of how the field was going to play him. Given the matchup, I thought maybe there's limited upside and, seemed like a good cash play. I know I played him in cash and did well. But, how is the field going to approach this with tournaments? Was he going to be chalk? And he actually ended up being chalk in the Millie Maker. He was projected on the slate as a second highest quarterback, second highest ownership. And that's ended up, how it ended up being on the slate. Now, you look at this lineup, obviously he had a low score, only 7 points, and he was unstacked. So I think, this is kind of a lesson, when we have a situation like this in the future. So many times when we stack, we are, you're hitting basically 9 legs of a parlay, right? To win a large field GPP like the Millie Maker. You have to beat out 130,000 entries. You almost have to have the perfect lineup. So you have to hit 9 legs of that parlay. So you stack, there's less that you're trying to get right. However, I do think when you have a player that is this low owned or this cheap rather, you don't need necessarily to force a stack as you see here. And here's my reasoning for this. This isn't like when you think about like a $6,500 quarterback or a 7K quarterback, you're really saying if that player is the guy that you need, he is most likely, scoring, and bringing a pass catcher or two along with him at that salary. But when they're 4,500, they don't have to do nearly as much. And if you can definitely get unique and differentiate your lineup by not stacking that quarterback and just looking to jam in studs in good matchups, who have high floor, high ceiling combination. Or you can also think about, how can I put other correlation in my lineup? So, like, for example, not that this was a Jameer Gibbs and Amon Ra lineup, but you could think of it like, what if Jared Goff to Jameer Gibbs and Amon Ra St. Brown? That is a pretty difficult stack to, for all of them salary wise to get there. But what if I just play Michael Penix naked and then, Jameer Gibbs, because he's a runner, he could do a lot on his own. I do a secondary stack, more or less with him and Amon Ra St. Brown. And those 3 players, could potentially get there. And I would have more salary savings so that I can afford other studs in the lineup, like, paying up at tight end with George Kittle. So I think it's just a different way to think about how to construct a lineup when you have a quarterback that this is this cheap and is not in like a really good passing matchup. Because we knew going against the Giants, they had kept a lot of quarterbacks to low fantasy scores. That you didn't necessarily need to sack Penix with one of his pass catchers. And, I don't think anyone thought, probably not even this guy or girl that built this lineup, that Penix was only going to score 7 points and end up in the winning Millie Maker lineup. But it's just a way to think about, how do I attack the slate if this situation presents itself again? Because it's not the first time we've got a 4K quarterback or a $4,500 quarterback. And I think because they're cheaper, you don't necessarily need to stack them. Just a little bit of game theory, in my opinion. But this overall lineup was really good. Jonathan Taylor going against Tennessee, that's more of a run funnel. This made sense, specifically the week he had the week before. Just so much negativity. That they were going to try to get Jonathan Taylor going because he's their best player. And he absolutely obliterated the slate, couple long runs, 3 touchdowns, 200 plus yards. Chuba Hubbard, this was chalk. Didn't end up being that high owned in tournaments, but this was a decent rushing matchup. And this was kind of rare that you had two running backs from the same game. So there was correlation in this lineup. That's the one thing I want to say. You got Penix correlated with Atlanta D. Now, you're not typically stacking a quarterback with the defense, but I think at certain times you certainly can, specifically going against the Giants, who have just been terrible. They have a terrible offensive line. Drew Lock's been terrible. Like, this made sense. So there was some correlation there. And then James Conner and Chuba Hubbard. Now, James Conner was in a smash spot. He was one of my favorite plays on the slate, him and Jameer Gibbs. And I think this lineup was able to obviously fit both of them in. And honestly, this lineup was very similar to a cash lineup. Um, in a lot of ways. I think what was different, is paying up at tight end. Typically, you're not going to do that in a cash lineup. Keishon Booty at 1% ownership. So, and obviously the Jonathan Taylor pivot off of Jameer Gibbs, like this was very much a cash lineup. And obviously had to pay up at defense too. So pay up at defense, pay up at tight end, and 1% Keishon Booty, and just kind of a Jonathan Taylor pivot off of Jameer Gibbs. JSN, I loved him in this spot. This was a good play. Keenan Allen going against that Detroit secondary. We're certainly going to see some Caleb Williams doubles when we look at the leaderboards, and we also do a little bit of DFS pros, look at their MME strategy. But, overall, a good lineup. This was a one-off, as some people might like to say in the comments, toilet build lineup. I don't know. Comment, let me know what you think of this lineup that took it down. Didn't use all 50K, 49.8. Pretty contrarian, 111%. And, overall, different type of build, but I mean, solo, single bullet shot to win the Millie Maker. I respect that. I would say I love seeing different types of builds that can get there, specifically when it's a single bullet. That's a lottery ticket that you are looking for. But if you guys like these kind of breakdowns, by the way, since you're here, hit that like button. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. So much content coming your way, so you don't want to miss any of it. Now, second place with an Anthony Richardson to Jonathan Taylor to Josh Downs stack. So that's crazy to me, to see both Richardson and Jonathan Taylor, because they don't, correlate that well together. But this lineup, was just kind of the same thing with the Penix lineup. It was just eating value, right? So Richardson, he was one of the top values on the slate, right next to Penix. And then, obviously Jameer Gibbs, wow, 54% in the millie. That's pretty high, really high. And, but he did pretty well. He kind of got there. And, Brian Thomas was a play I loved as well. Loved Debo at 5,200. Just felt so cheap there. Downs, he was popping a little bit in DFS Army's domination station. Chig, I loved Chig. I was jamming him in a little bit. I wish I had more. End up with like, maybe 10%, but it was just a nice one-to-one pivot off of Strange Chalk, and tight ends fill at such a high rate. So anytime you have tight end chalk, it's always good, even if you eat some of it, to find pivots like Chicken Conquo right here. And then, James Conner. And this also actually had, now that I look at this was a Richardson +2 with Anthony, with JT being one of them, and then a chick bring back. Let's see what third place did. Caleb double with the Jameer Gibbs. Now we're gonna see this a lot in the leaderboards. Caleb, great game for Caleb to DJ Moore to Keenan Allen with the Gibbs bring back, and this had a Jameson bring back. So this was heavy on Chicago and Detroit game, and almost won a milli, 140K, third place. Fourth place, same thing. We're seeing Caleb, but no Gibbs, no Jameson, no Amon-Ra bring back. I like the Malik Washington play. I was hoping for more from him, but I thought it was a good play. This one, Caleb single with Jameson bring back. Brenton Strange, wow, it's just crazy. A third of the field played him. I mean, a third of the field essentially dead from winning first place with the 3 there. And yeah, Taylor, we're going to see Taylor in all these builds. He was only 6% owned, but he got all these lineups to, well, I guess at least in the top five, to in the top 10. Now, it was interesting because the running backs carried this slate. Like the fact that James Cook scored 30 and, it was kind of an afterthought because Chuba smashed and Jonathan Taylor smashed. And honestly, Connor scored 26, but he missed the entire fourth quarter. So, he should have had over 30. It's just a crazy slate for the running backs. Now, this one was Goff +2 with Jameson and Laporta and a Keenan Allen bring back. So just a little bit different. See what G Money did here. Caleb +2 with a Gibbs bring back. Hunter Henry had a pretty good day at 4,100. You've seen his name a couple times here. Another Jonathan Taylor lineup. So, yeah, Taylor's been in all of these except for one. Caleb +2 with a Gibbs bring back. This one had Hubbard and Taylor, Debo, Samuel. And this one was 10th place. So another Penix lineup. This one had Bijan in it. And it's the same idea. So I had Bijan on Kyle Pitts. Now that's what sucks about this. If this lineup, like the Bijan play was good, but if you didn't need, just kind of like my point earlier, you didn't need to stack Penix. And you definitely didn't need +2 with Penix. So you swap out Kyle Pitts for Chicken Conquo and you're in business here. But still, 5K, 10th place in the Millie. This one had Taylor in it as well. So yeah, some good stuff. I wanted to take a look at one DFS pro who did pretty well because most pros did not do well on the slate. And I think it was an interesting slate because, like, for me personally, nailed the running backs, was over the field on, double the field on Jonathan Taylor, had Connor, had Gibbs, had even a little bit of Cook, but you really had to get the tight end right. I know the wide receivers too, but like you had to get the tight end right and you had to get the quarterback right on the slate, for the most part, unless you were, like doing naked Penix stacks. So that was definitely tough. Now, Royal Payne has won the Millie Maker before. I saw last week he had like another huge win and definitely a top DFS player. His top lineup had it was a Caleb double stack, which we saw a lot on the leaderboards, and you could see he's just outside the top 50 in this contest. Had Connor, had Ford. I liked Ford too. Had him as well. It was good to eat some of the Gibbs chalk, but also it was good to get different because there were the chalk running backs. Like it was like one of these guys is going to fail. One of these guys is not going to smash. So how can you get different? So this was a Caleb +2, and you're seeing all his top lineups did have running back in the flex. Looks like he had Conklin, he had Jasecki, Bellinger, but more running back in the flex. And these are all Caleb +2 lineups. Running back, wide receiver, Gino +2. No Minnesota bringbacks. Okay. Let's see Royal Payne's exposures. And then after this, we're going to jump into what won the two gamer because we had one on Saturday and we got one on Christmas. And then we have a 3-gamer on Saturday. So really want to take a look at, what is winning these contests and, how could we attack them? So what's interesting, Royal Payne was heavy on Caleb and Aiden O'Connell. And it was a good matchup for Aiden O'Connell going against Las Vegas. But it's also Aiden O'Connell. So it does take a lot of guts to play a terrible quarterback like Aiden O'Connell, 20% exposure in the Millie Maker. And so, 4 quarterbacks above 10% exposure, Caleb and AOC being the highest, and then that's it. Everyone else was 5% or less. Played 15 quarterbacks, so pretty large pool. Jaden Daniels was the nuts, really, 36 points. And then, yeah, ton of Gibbs. So clearly loved Gibbs, was almost, was definitely a core play for Royal Pain, being 30% over the field and, not far shy of 100% exposure. Jonathan Taylor, so that really helped him, 20% exposure to JT. Chase Brown did not get there. It was a pretty low scoring day for him, but didn't have a ton. Not a ton that it like really hurt him. 15% Chuba, James Conner, almost even with the field there. Bijan. And then I like to see, who are the fades. So at running back, there really wasn't like any big fades. See, we got Gibbs, we got Connor, Chuba, Chalk, Bijan. Yeah. Wide receiver, who were the fades? Okay. Not really any big ones that like jump out to me. Now that I'm looking at it, is there any Justin Jefferson? I don't see Justin Jefferson here. Nope. So literally just full faded Justin Jefferson, which was not the week to do it. Had a lot of Jacoby Myers, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen. Now, ended up being a profitable day because he nailed the stack. So way, over the field on DJ Moore and Keenan Allen, nailed that Caleb +2 stack. Decent day for Metcalf, bad day for Jennings, good day for JSN, okay for Neighbors, wasn't way under the field on Thomas, just slightly. Half the field on Adams, so was under there, was under on Chase, but that did not hurt him. So the only one that really hurt him was, full fading Justin Jefferson. And then, yeah, it's pretty crazy that he full faded Justin Jefferson, had 60% strange, and was able to have a profitable day. And it was really because he, had so much of Caleb +2 and had the right +2. And that one lineup was in the top 65. Yeah, that's a lot of Brent Strange. I felt like an idiot playing like 25% Brent Strange. That's a lot. And Atlanta was really the defense you needed, as we saw in the Millie Maker. I mean, they had, I think, 2 pick sixes. So pretty crazy. But yeah, that's Royal Strange's top lineups. And, you know, one thing you'll see too is typically, specifically in the Millie Maker or large full GPP like this, to not win it and be able to have a profitable day shows consistency. And these are all Caleb lineups, as I was saying: 214, 211, 209, 204, 204, 203. So 100, 100, 100, just 175. Like, yeah, that'll definitely make it a positive day. And we can, I mean, very consistent 190s. Like, this is a lot of consistency to have a profitable day. And this is also why like Royal Pain is such a good DFS player, because um this is the type of consistency that will get several lineups near the top. So when you're right on that right stack and you're on those right core players, then you just kind of continue to shuffle through like a bunch of one-offs or 2v2s, And that's how you get a lineup to the top of the leaderboards. And because you have so many that are consistently close there. So good on Royal Pain. Let's take a look at the 2 game slate before we wrap this up. So this was on Saturday. I want to look at the Millie, and this cracks me up. Utica. Yeah, I can't jump around too much because this won't load at all. I was looking at this earlier and it was like really bad, like more bad than normal. But he put 4 lineups in the top here in one 100K. Now this one was what, a 31 entry. And but it's just kind of funny. I guess I'm wondering how many what's the total entries. Like maybe it's you put 4 lineups in. In fact, I don't see anyone else putting more than 4. So then it might be a 4 entry max. But CJ Stroud plus 3, Nico, Tank Dell, Schultz, Henry, Warren, Xavier Worthy, Zay Flowers in Baltimore. And yeah, this was the combination that you needed on the slate. Like you needed Tank Dell and Xavier Worthy from that KC and Houston game. If you didn't have that combination, you weren't winning. Like those two together at their salary, were definitely going to be in the winning lineup. All right, let's see what won the 300K to first. So it was 165, and this was Lamar plus Henry plus Flowers. Now that's one thing I think people need to reframe their mind when you're playing smaller slates like this is Lamar, Derrick Henry, that's typically not going to win you a large field GPP on a main slate because Henry's 8K, Lamar's 8,200, unless they absolutely smash and they score 40 points, which we've seen before. Um, and they did pretty close in this game, in this spot. I do believe one of the touchdowns though was a pick six. So unless the offense puts up 40 points, you're typically not going to, at these salaries, like these two players are not going to do enough to be in the winning lineup. But on smaller slates, you have to think about it differently. There's only 2 games. So, you know, Lamar and Henry can get there. And that's what you see here with Flowers. And then this had, and it's 2 games. So obviously you're almost always going to have a bring back. And it's not forced. It just happens naturally with the Jalen Warren. And then, like I said, Tank Dell and Xavier Worthy, those were the gotta have it players. So as we saw the last one, he won without Lamar and Henry, but he had Dell and Worthy. Utica. This lineup had Dell and Worthy, but had Lamar and Henry. So it was different build. But these were the two gotta have it players. Kareem Hunt did well, 5K. So, he was kind of the contrarian play here. Obviously, this was, a unique lineup. 306% total ownership, which is pretty low for a 2 game slate. So, and yeah, Kareem Hunt at 7%. That was the difference. Let's take a look at Utica. Utica actually MME'd this, and obviously he's a DFS pro and a really sharp player. So I want to look at his lineups. Um, this was Lamar Henry. So he's very similar and really 9 points away from the top spot. But this is Lamar Henry and Isaiah Likely with the Jalen Warren bring back. This had Nico Dell and Worthy. So he had that Dell and Worthy combination that he needed. Schultz just didn't quite get there. But let's look at his exposures. So, I think this is for 150. If you're playing 150 in on a 2 game slate, one thing to keep in mind is you really want to take some hard stance in spots. Now, clearly, Patrick Mahomes was the guy that he wanted the most exposure to, but he also wanted significant amount of Lamar and Stroud, and basically full faded Russell Wilson, and that's basically exactly how I played this slate. However, I had more Lamar than Mahomes, so it was Lamar, Mahomes and Stroud, and then Wilson, and I get that because Wilson without Pickens, it was going to be really tough for him to beat out Mahomes, Stroud, and Lamar. But he decided the most exposure. I want to be triple the field on Patrick Mahomes. And then, just wanted some Lamar and some Stroud for the rest of his exposure. So 60-40 more or less for Mahomes. And then he split the 40 up between Lamar and Stroud. Now, at running back, faded Mixon, and I get it. Also, uh, it's interesting. You think about this, like specifically in these 2 to 3 gamers, like who is your fade? Like, because there's so much leverage to be had with a player who's 61% owned, or Nico Collins who's 75% owned. So, like, if you can guess that fade correctly, you really put yourself in a position to take down the tournament. And that's exactly what he did here. What faded Mixon, had some, but was way under the field on Mixon, and that was a good fade. Over the field on Jalen Warren, so took a stand there. This was tilting too because I had about 20-25% Justice Hill. In his first touch, he got a huge gain, like 30 yards. And he was probably going to have a big game or at least make value at 4,800. And then he gets a concussion at the end of the first play. That sucked. Even on Henry, even on Pacheco. And, was under on Hunt, actually, but Hunt wasn't highly owned, so it didn't matter that much. And then it was even on Najee. So basically wanted exposure to everyone, faded Mixon, and was over on Jalen Warren. And then here, so like I said, the field was playing a lot of Nico Collins and a lot of Joe Mixon, so I had to make a choice. Am I playing one or the other? And he chose Nico Collins. Also had a good amount of Dell, double the field on Dell, so that was really good. And a lot of Flowers too, which made sense with Bateman banged up, and they were missing another guy. Aguilar was out. So yeah. Worthy had a good day. Didn't fade Worthy. Faded Calvin Austin. Over the field on Hollywood. Over on Kelsey. Over on Likely. And I like that as well. And then even on Andrews. Faded Fryermuth. So that worked out. So, that's a great way, I think, to think about these slates, these small slates, when we look to play on Wednesday, is who are you going to fade? Who are you going to be over the field on? Take hard stands, and don't be scared. Scared money doesn't make money. So that's going to wrap it up. Like I said before, if you guys like this kind of content, let me know. Let me know who you played on the Saturday slate. If you did, let me know how it went for you. Let me know who you like on the Wednesday slate for Christmas if you're going to be playing it. So we will catch you. We got a couple more of these. We'll catch you on the next week in review. See you next time.